Well, hello. After a very challenging springtime for everybody out there, we want to kind of pick up a little bit and get going on our YouTube series that deals with short video clips that highlight leadership in rapidly changing and unpredictable and unstable environments, which, let's face it, this kind of is out there because of a lot of the stuff going on. So it just highlights one point, and I just want to call your attention to one point that most of you that have been subscribed to my YouTube channel have probably seen before. And you may recall that I've got one video in there that makes the difference between the contract mentality and the covenant mentality. And you remember what the difference in that video was that the contract mindset basically said, I'm going to hold on to my rights and surrender my responsibilities. The covenant mindset says, I'll surrender a couple of my rights if I need to, so as to take on my responsibilities. And that's the subtle difference between the two. One picture, and I think most of you remember that when I graduated from F4 qualification training in the Air Force, I was the outstanding, was a graduate, and as such, I was hand selected for one of the top squadrons in the Air Force, and I didn't realize that at the time. But it was a squadron that had a solid reputation. And there came a time where the wing commander of the 4th Attack Fighter Wing was going to do an operational readiness inspection or an exercise. It was basically, you're going to be fighting a war for a week. And it was only our squadron. And what he was doing is he was looking at this from the standpoint of, how do I, really kind of assess what they're really capable of doing. So it was only for our squadron out of the whole wing, and it was just for that week. But there was something else that was kind of interesting. Just before the exercise, he called the squadron commander and the chief scheduler and the weapons manager up to the wing headquarters. And as soon as they walked in the room, the commander said, gentlemen, have a seat. You're going to sit this one out. And he gave the motion, and the guy kicked off the siren to start the war. So we had to perform without the leadership there. And it was an interesting challenge. But what I did is I realized that on the very first flight, as we climbed up in a little bit of altitude, I was getting excruciating pains in one tooth. And what was happening is I had a little cavity in there, but the air was getting in there and expanding, and it was causing excruciating pain. Well, I kind of grimaced and grinned and bared it, and all that sort of stuff through the fight to get as much as we could done. But I knew I couldn't keep going the whole week that way. So we got back, and I told my crewmate, I said, listen, I'm going to save time, I'm going to go up there right now, drive up there, see if they can do something. How about telling Colonel Miner that, who was our ops officer who had to step up and run the war kind of thing. And I went to the dentist, and what was interesting is when the dentist looked at it, he said there was this one cavity there, and he said, but I'll tell you, Captain, he said, if I put you on Novocaine, you're off flying status for 24 hours. And I looked at him without missing a beat. I said, then don't use it. And he looked at me like, what? I said, don't use it. I said, you just do what you need to do. It was not fun. I was grimacing and bearing, kind of thing the whole time, but he got it done. And when it was complete, I drove back to the squadron about 1.5 miles or so, and I hustled in, and I went right up to Colonel Miner, and I said, sir, I'm ready to go again. And he was shocked. He was surprised. Really? I said, yes, sir. I said, I'm good to go. And we only missed that one line out of the whole week. And we went back in for the standpoint that for the whole week, we literally blew the roof off of their expectations. We really showed what we were made of. And in fact, the wing commander came up at the end of the week when the thing was over and was making all the positive comments about what he saw and all that. And the squadron commander made a couple of comments, and when Colonel Miner stood up on a platform, he was talking all about who we were and what we did, and he called me out by name for what I did. And I didn't think anything about that. I didn't do it for my glory or any attention or anything, but he called me out for what I did. And the byline of the 335th Chiefs was Chief Standards. And what's interesting is that's very key to know. What drove me to do that had nothing to do with the command's decision, guidance from the top, or anything like that. I was willing to surrender a couple of my rights because I would have had a right to get Novocaine and just go chill out for a day. kind of thing. That could have been right. But I was willing to surrender some of that to take on the responsibilities. And I went with a covenant mindset because I felt a covenant. And that doesn't happen because you drill it into somebody. That happens because people believe in what you're doing. And that is an active, ongoing process. And here's the challenge with that is if the manager does not lead that, why should the people follow it? And so that was something that the leadership, squadron commanders and all that, had instilled and had modeled and worked for and put into the squadrons because of their behavior. We followed it, and it worked fantastic. So it's just very interesting. And when you look at a lot of managers today, one of the challenges is that the way they try to make that happen is they either build a PowerPoint presentation and lecture you about it, or they build a video and say, this is what you need to do. Well, to that manager, if you're not modeling that, why should they follow it? You're going with a contract mentality with the threats and all that kind of stuff if you don't get it done. So that doesn't happen. And I know as I think back on that, that doesn't happen because I wanted any attention for myself. That was not even anywhere close. I just looked at it and said, here's my teams, and this is what we want to do. And one of the things that drove that, and a fraternity brother and I were talking one time about why is it somebody willingly in the military throws themselves on a grenade to give their life to protect somebody else. And what we understood was that it's a challenging question, but I think one of the central aspects is that they believe that if the shoe was on the other foot, the other people would do the same thing. And it's an aspect of this this covenant mentality rather than the contract mentality. Look in your teams. What do you see? What do you need to do differently to get potential really coming out of your team at the point of attack? So I leave that for you this week, and look in your team, look in your organization, and see what you see.